Other than temporary use, I really wouldn't do, and that is basically functions. So, and when people think of putting business logic in the database, they'll probably say, "Hey, I'm going to write my own functions, and it'll be great."
Yeah.
I would generally not write functions for that purpose. I do write functions frequently for DBA tasks. Again, I think of these as more temporary, but they're not something that's going to be running and utilizing like a daily business logic use case usage. And now related to functions are procedures, which they're again, databases handle them differently, but basically functions operate just within a single commit. And they can be as simple as, hey, take this value, like 2 plus 2, do a sum of the values or something. Whereas procedures can operate across or can have multiple commits in them so that a lot more work can be done. So, what's your opinion on functions and procedures and whatnot?
So I've worked with a database at a job a while back that was that heavily used functions. It was an MSSQL database, but it was like almost everything that you did in the database was calling a function in the database, right? So the Ruby code was really simple, but you couldn't figure out how the hell anything worked because you can't trace database functions really. So it was nice from the perspective of it can simplify your Ruby code a lot, your ORM stuff, but making changes to that logic or what happens to data gets to be really tedious because now I have to write a complicated database migration to basically drop that function and create a new one with some edits. But I have to go back and get that function to begin with because you can't just, you know, can't really just add this field to this function. You've got to basically write the whole function again or copy it all. So you got to drop the thing, copy it all, make your edit. I've got a whole new migration. Now I want to find out how the hell this happened in my Ruby code. Well, I've got to go look in database code. So they can be useful for doing simplistic, foolish type things that are going to be um, not complex, that will always happen because of the definition of how you laid your data out, and that you don't want to have to do over and over in your Ruby code or your front end code. So they can be useful for that. But again, it kind of obfuscates how your data is being processed from your Ruby code. So it can get a bit dangerous using those things. Um,
Yeah, I think simple functions like without side effects. Like all it is taking a few values that are being returned and maybe puts it in a different format. I think a simple function like that, if you wanted to do in the database, but that would be fine, if your team wants to do that. Um, but yeah, anything more than that, because like what you were just described sounded like the active server page application I was thinking about 2 decades ago,
yeah,
where everything was a stored procedure.
right. And I think they're much safer and more useful pulling data out, modifying data as you're reading it, rather than trying to modify data as you're storing it. So, for instance, something like a function that will build you an entire address blob out of individual fields, that
Yeah.
kind of thing, because I'm not actually mucking with my data. Um, it, and then you get into, well, is that a view or a function or what? It depends on how you have to get there. But um, yes,
But again, you're right. Working with functions is very frustrating with regard to what you were saying in terms of you can't just, hey, just replace this line and update. It's
yeah,
literally you have to recompile or, basically create or replace the whole function every time you do it.
right.
So
And
that in and of itself is just a difficult
it's a pain in the
exercise.
ass. I do see where they might be useful for kind of some back end regular maintenance type things. Where I need to do some stuff to the database. We need to do like our annual code clean or annual data cleanup and archival things and stuff like that. Where I don't want to have to write a crap ton of SQLs. So I've got these functions that'll do stuff, and I can just call the functions in a batch at the end of the year and let it
Yeah.
do some admin stuff. But from the front end of programming, I don't like to use them too much.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're on the same page
Yeah.
with regard to that. All right. So those are pretty much the ways in which I would tend to apply business logic to the database. So it's not really a lot of nothing about flow control, nothing about anything of that nature in the database. It's basically trying to keep your data secure and consistent. If you like this clip and want to watch another one, you can click right here. Or if you want to watch the full video, you can click here.